who have joined us. So good evening and welcome to Art Radio. And my name is Ritika Kocher and I'm an author and an art writer. So in terms of art writing, I write for The Hindu, Frontline, India Today, etc. And I do this because I believe that art history allows us to show and tell the margins of history and culture. And while people can debate about history, this person says this and this person says that. But if you have, and I have been lucky enough to study under somebody like Kavita Singh, who will show you the margins of art. And what is in the margins of art cannot be debated about because it's right there in black and white or in red for you to see. And I am also the author of 3 books that contemporize mythology, sustainability, gender themes, and I believe thoroughly in her story. It's not only his story, but we are lucky enough very often to see her story in these margins. So that is where Art Radio also comes about. And Art Radio came about last year in November after the passing away of Kavita Singh and Dr. B.N. Goswami, 2 people I'd studied under. And as you know, they were both the doyens of miniature art, especially. And this then became a platform where some of the most interesting speakers have come on and spoken about topics which, as I said, are in the margins to a large extent. And the people who've come on have been some of the best speakers I can think of. And they're not only Indian. We've been lucky enough to have Indian, but we've also had Pakistani speakers. We've had speakers from America. We've had speakers from England. We've had speakers from Iran talking about things like farishte. And one of those speakers who I was lucky enough to meet while I was talking, when I was writing about books and I was talking about social media and how far we are in social media and freedom today, was ironically Professor Yashadatta Somaji Alone, who isn't really on social media, but talks about freedom a lot. And Professor Alone teaches at the Schools of Arts and Aesthetics in Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. His research interests and publications are on ancient Indian art, Buddhist caves in Western India, in Ambedkarite visual representation, as we know, popular neo-Buddhist visual culture, the interpretative framework of Dr. Ambedkar, and social sciences. And we did one session together. It was phenomenal. It was really phenomenal. And he was kind enough to say that he would take that one session and divide it up into the time it deserved. So here we are in section 2 of Ambedkarite visual representation. It's a course which in 75 years or 76 years of Indian independence, it becomes more and more important to know where we are going. Me, as a woman, we are seeing where we are in terms of women's rights. And even Gandhi said that if women don't have rights in a country, then that country is not a developed country. But equally, there are classes and castes who also, if they don't have those rights, then we know that that country is moving into spaces that we don't want it to move into. So it was very kind of Dr. Alone in this month of August 2024, 76 years of India's freedom, to agree to talk about representations of visual culture in Ambedkarite discourse. And so Professor Alone, as I said, is this wonderful person who teaches at Schools of Arts and Aesthetics, but he's also been nominated as the ICCR visiting professor in China. He's been a short-term visiting professor at Beijing, Shanghai, Madrid, Heidelberg in Germany. He served as member of various committees of the Government of India. And in 2014, he published a book on early Western Indian Buddhist caves, forms and patronage. So for this, he has also evolved a critical conceptual formulation termed as protected ignorance and has published papers on it. I was also recently just a little while ago on the WhatsApp group that we have created for this masterclasses. I also posted an interview that was done with the person that we are discussing today in class number 2, who is Savi Savarkar, who is incidentally with us and on your screens right now. And Dr. Savarkar, tell us how do we start this? While I'm waiting for Professor Alone to join us, would you like to say something about your work, or do we wait for Professor Alone to first talk and then we bring you in? Sir, you'll have to unmute yourself. Sir, you're muted. 1 minute, I'll just unmute you. I can't seem to unmute you. I'll have to ask you to unmute. Can you unmute yourself, sir?
While
Yes, I can hear you.
now it's okay. Actually, Alone has done work on my work, and it's very difficult to speak about on my own work. Alone and Gary Tartakov, they have written on my work, especially my belonging to the community is a Neo Buddhist community. I come from that, and I have that kind of the legacy of Ambedkarian family. So we got so many things from that great stalwart and constitution giver, and he gave it to us to the Buddhism in 1956. Where of course my grandfather and grandmother was part and parcel of that mega event, and slowly we developed that kind of grammar to that conversion and the social struggle. What Dr. Ambedkar has done, and there was a follower of his follower, society was his follower. So, therefore, actually, we are the manifestation of that mega event, you know. And Alone is one of them also. He's from Chandrapur. I'm from Nagpur. Both places Baba Sahib has given the Diksha to our community. And we came to know that this whole system, it has a psychological dimension. And Baba Sahib talks about that. If there is he gave it to the theory of the broken man. You know, once upon a time, we were Buddhist, and how we become untouchable, and how we Dalits, you know. Then Eleanor Zelia talked about that. This many of they have done, and Gary Dotokov has written, edited Dalit art and the visual measure. And again, Mr. Thodat, he's Mr. S.K. Thodat, he uses German. He wrote the preface of that. So this is a small journey, and is it Alone is there? Hello?
Sir, he's
Hello?
not here yet.
Oh,
He's just joining in, sir.
Okay.
Just give him 2 minutes. He's just joining in.
Okay. So this is a small introduction from my side.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's already. Take care. Bye.
I've just spoken to Professor Alone. He's obviously technically something has gone wrong technically, so that's why he isn't here. If anyone has any questions for Dr. Savarkar, please can you put them into the chat box? Because I know I have questions for once Professor Alone has finished his presentation. I know I have questions for Dr. Savarkar. That was, as I said, he's done some very, very interesting work.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, sir.
Hi. Am I?
Yes, you're visible.
I'm visible. Okay.
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry. I'm late. Now we can begin.
Shall we just check out your presentation once, sir, before we begin?
Yeah. Sure. Let me see. Share. Right. Is it visible?
Very visible, sir.
Oh, perfect. Fine. Thank you.
We're handing over to you now, sir.
Okay. Now tell me, should I straight away start or you?
Been introduced and all, sir. So the stage is entirely yours now.
Okay, thank you. First, let me apologize. I'm extremely sorry for being late because I was setting up my PPT. I was not very happy with the PPT I prepared earlier. So I had to virtually redo everything, and hence the delay. So the title of today's lecture is Caste in Pictorial Space, the beginning, and yeah. The issue of caste was brought to forefront by two great intellectuals of India, Mahatma Phule and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Both defied intellectual politics of homogeneity and made a fundamental difference and a contribution in understanding of the India's deep uh, 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 the India's deep seated problems, which is a monster according to Dr. Ambedkar. So Phule's analysis was to unpack the nature of exploitation in the Indian society. Ambedkar analyzed caste as a structural problems deeply associated with the function of society and the religious and philosophical defense as embedded character in the Indian social and religious system. He observed that Chaturvarna is not mere ritual in the Hindu society, but is deeply rooted in the religious philosophy itself. And this he makes it very clear in the philosophy of Hinduism as well as Riddle 11. He observed that endogamy is an essential characteristic of caste. The idea of surplus man and surplus women was advocated, and that is how certain norms were imposed in order to maintain the group. Consequently, it becomes part of the Jati Dharma or the caste principle. And then in annihilation of caste, he defines caste not only division of labor, but also division of laborers. So there have been studies on caste, and mainly you can understand how there's a comparison between Ambedkar and Dumo by Flitzgerald, Timothy Flitzgerald. It's a very interesting, he wrote an article, Ambedkar and Dumo, by making not only comparison, but also methodological issues of both the scholars in the sphere of sociology and traits of Orientalism in an essay called From Structure to Substance, Ambedkar, Dumo and Orientalism. And then we have a very important thing. Let me point out these two books which have been published by so-called a very great, considered to be a great intellectual tradition, or considered to be the highest form of researches in India and abroad, mainly Oxford University Press. So there is this Declan Quigley. He was I suppose he was a British, and he published a book in 1999, The Interpretation of Caste. Then there is an Oxford Handbook of Caste by Surinder Singh Jodhka and Julius Naude. And then further, it became an Oxford Introduction to Caste by Surinder Jodhka, published in 2012. Now, why I am pointing out these two important books that are published by the Grandmaster Oxford University Press, precisely because both the books completely silent on Ambedkar's contribution of defining caste and his work on the caste. They do not consider Dr. Ambedkar as a person of importance, as a scholar who made a difference. And in fact, Dr. Ambedkar was the first one to work on caste. If you read his Caste in India, it's a seminal essay he produced where he observed how endogamy and other practices are the marked characteristics of caste. Nevertheless, in rather in spite of all those things, these two people did not acknowledge Ambedkar's contribution in the studies of caste. There are studies that have been systematized by foregrounding the Ambedkar's annihilation of caste. On the other hand, the claimed intellectuals in India and abroad exhibited their ingrained hate towards Ambedkar. And these are the fantastic examples, or even for that matter, the post-colonialist who have considered caste as a colonial construct. I mean, these are the fantastic examples of intellectual scoundrels of sterling quality. I would like to define them in these words. I don't have any other parliamentary word to describe their contribution or describe their state of mind. So this is how the Indian intelligentsia work and studies. And the worst part is that Surinder Singh Jodhka, who is a professor in sociology, my own colleague, my dear, and our friend also, when I told him, he said, no, arey yaar, I was writing on caste. I was not writing on Ambedkar. Bullshit. You are writing on caste and you are not considering Ambedkar's contribution in defining caste, in understanding of the caste, and also the nature of structural problems which the Indian society has been facing. So these are this is how their mindset go, and there is a complete disregard towards Ambedkar's contribution. In 1927, I mean, Ambedkar returns from Colombia. He joins the movement, and in 1927 there was a first human right agitation called Mahad Satyagraha in modern India, way back in 1927, and there is a burning of Manusmriti on 25th December 1927. So this became a very pivotal event in the 20th century India that clearly shows rejection of Manusmriti. Then in 1930, he launched Kadaram in temple entry agitation. And he realized that neither the temple entry agitation or these kind of things will solve the problems of the untouchability, and therefore he moves on to explore the larger issues of untouchability, not only untouchability, but caste itself. And that is how he wrote Annihilation of Caste. However, before that, there is a 1932 Pune Pact between Dr. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi on separate electorate. Now, what is that separate electorate? People think that, Ambedkar was for the division of the society and all kinds of things. I mean, all nonsense has been spread by Congress historians, the claimed intellectuals of this nation, and the secular and liberal intellectuals and the academicians in this country, including the claimed political leadership who claim to be secular and a very fair-minded. On the contrary, the demand was that what is separate electorate? See, it has been beautifully explained in Rajshekhar Mundru's book. You can read that book. So it is the idea is that there will be a constituency, reserved constituency, which is called separate electorate, and that constituency will have two candidates. One will be a general candidate who will be elected by all, and there will be a second candidate, that is wherever there is a sizable number of scheduled caste population, there will be a separate constituency, and that will be treated as a separate constituency, and there will be a second person from that, second candidate, the elected representative from the scheduled caste community itself. That means those who will be voted by the scheduled caste community only. That is what is the separate electorate. So the scheduled caste did not to be dependent on the others, and they can choose their own representatives. And this is what Gandhi opposed. And when the associate of Gandhi, Mr. Mehta, asked Gandhi, why do you oppose? You agreed separate electorate for untouchables, but you are not agreeing separate electorate for the untouchables. You have agreed separate electorate for the Muslims and other people, but you are denying the separate electorate for the untouchables. So Gandhi's reply was that the Muslims and untouchables will come together and butcher caste Hindus. This is what the great exponent of non-violence said, and this is a recorded history. Irrespective of all those things, Gandhi is regarded as a great persona, as a Mahatma in this country. So, after publication of Annihilation of Caste, there is a debate between Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi in 1936. And this debate is very important. At least Gandhi dared to respond to Dr. Ambedkar, and no one else responded to Dr. Ambedkar. Even after Ambedkar's reply, Gandhi did not respond to Ambedkar, and the debate ends, but continued in the making of Indian Constitution as well as afterwards. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that Gandhi was seeing caste only in terms of untouchability, whereas Dr. Ambedkar was seeing caste as a structured problems of the Indian society whose roots are located elsewhere, not in the social, but religious and philosophical. This is the fundamental difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar. Gandhi was Vedantic, Dr. Ambedkar was anti-Vedantic, anti-Vedic. He was going by the Buddhist logic. He followed that Pratita Samutpad very diligently. Dr. Ambedkar made an extensive critique of Gandhi, Hindutva, caste, Indian politics, communalism, international politics, religion and philosophy, Chaturvarna and Manusmriti. On the other hand, V.D. Savarkar, that is Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, which is renamed as Veer Savarkar in Maharashtra, and then there are writings these days against the whole title of the Veer, how the appellation of Veer gets contested. So it becomes a contesting category. I don't want to go into those kind of debates, but I'm just telling you at nutshell. But what is important here in this case is that Savarkar wrote in Marathi Itihasatil Saha Suvarna Pane, that is 6 golden pages in Indian history. And it was in response to Dr. Ambedkar's annihilation of caste, because he made a critique of history. And therefore, Savarkar wrote these 6 golden pages in Indian history, which was very much part of the Brahminical cultural nationalism. Now, I would like to quote this particular point which Dr. Ambedkar formulates as a part of framework of understanding the phenomenon. That is, rules are practical, they are habitual ways of doing things according to prescription, but principles are intellectual. They are useful methods of judging things. Rules seek to tell an agent just what course of action to pursue. Principles do not prescribe a specific course of action. So this is what Dr. Ambedkar says. Then I again quote Dr. Ambedkar, what he wrote in 1940, what he said in 1949. He says, on 26 January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. And this is how the life of contradictions we enter in, and there are aesthetical contradictions as well. The history of modern Indian art in pre- and post-independent India is full of contradictions, appropriations, hegemonic, and highly Brahminic. The aesthetic persuasions have been mere formalism, including the revivalist and later modernists, bypassing the social and contradictions as pointed out by Dr. Ambedkar. It is full of speculative aesthetical metaphysics. The issue of caste never became a concern. The creative training in the art school was within the apparatus of high modernism. At the same time, there are appropriations of folk and tribal art forms, which itself is problematic. Professor Shukla Sawant observes that the appropriation of folk art by likes of Swaminathan was from the point of caste and gender power perspective. It is an embedded aspect that makes modernity a project of meta-narrative of Brahmanic modernity. Now I come to the term which I have devised, the term Ambedkarian aesthetics. The term Ambedkarian aesthetics is world free from prejudices, inhibitions, and meta-narratives of hegemonic or Brahmanic modernity. Its historical trajectory is to subvert the narrative of the given and propose to get into a process of dismantling several inhibitions that have been nurtured over a period of time. Historical past, both ancient and modern, are constant reminders of ideas of contradictions that have been part of lives, including the life of works of art. For many, it is a constant engagement to kill protected ignorance. Now I come to Savi's works. So actually, there are 2 buildings which you are showing. The one with flag is a government polytechnic Nagpur in a southern area. And in that area, in that campus, Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya, government Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya was located in the polytechnic compound, which is now shifted to new building opposite to Diksha Mohbi. This institute has been renamed as Government College of Art and Design, and it was the first institute to start degree BFA in 1967 in Maharashtra. So you can understand how the BFA degree started in Maharashtra, whereas JJ School of Art was happily running GD Art and Aurangabad School of Art was happily running GD Art. And this became hugely problematic, and the problems are still persisting. And the institute like Sir J.J. School of Art is in doldrum today, and all the government institutions in state of Maharashtra, art institutions are in doldrum. I cannot tell you the kind of things that are going on and how they have happened. There is a long history. But coming back to this particular institute, actually this Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya, actually it was painted red, and that is why we used to call it as Lal Kila. So it was popularly known as our Red Fort, that kind of a things. So now I come to Savi. He was a pioneer in anti-caste paintings in India who challenged the cosmetic meta-narrative of modernity through pictorial language. Now, how that process happened? Nagpur was active Ambedkarite center. The educational environment was completely different. Nagpur is full of institutions, and there are a number of institutions, mainly the government institutions, that are run in the city of Nagpur. Then the teaching during that time was so much moved with the structured syllabus of based on Bauhaus school, as well as the the uh, the language of modernity, like how you have to be creative, how you can do distortion of the figure, how you can do abstraction. So much moved by Klee, Mondrian, then Kandinsky, and at one level so much moved by likes of Picasso and lot of other people. So this is what was being told in the art schools in Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya. There were teachers in the Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya who were who were important in many ways. Say, for example, there was this Professor K. Salve, who had been very active, was a very known person in the field and was knowing what is happening in the contemporary art. There were other people like Dhananjay Verma, who was great portrait painter. Then we have Professor P.S. Ramteke, who joined later because he was working in Sir J.J. School of Art. And there were number of people who like Mendule, then Dhomne, and many of those illuminative. Then Bede and Kate. So these were Upper Sahib Kate, Upper Kate. These people, I mean, they were good faculty. They were not bad faculty, but they couldn't understand the future. They could not understand what the idea of vibrancy. Their idea of vibrancy was confined only in the in crafting the textural surface on the canvas. So what was being taught is that to create a visual sensations, and how differently you can create visual sensations, and that creation of the visual sensation or the pictorial balance in the picture space was considered as a marker of achievement. And this is how the students were taught, the training process went on. Now the next point is that of the discussion on literature. It was also an emergence, complete emergence of Dalit literary movement by the time Savi entered in Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya. So the Nagpur was, city of Nagpur was full of those debates, and he would go with his friends to Rani Jhansi Square, where the Vidarbha Sahitya Sangh building is located. Today it is completely, it has been rebuilt, but the Vidarbha Sahitya Sangh building became a very important marker as far as the cultural activities in the city of Nagpur was concerned. It's not that, very few, marginally, one or two teachers once in a while would go to those literary circles. However, it was Savi, Suresh Moon, and Baban Besekar. These three people who were studying in Chitrakala Mahavidyalaya had a great attraction and interaction with the literary figures of that time in that Vidarbha Sahitya Sangha premises. And it was a regular kind of a visit they had. And that is where Savi, that he started imbibing those things. Even Suresh Moon and Baban Besekar also started imbibing those things. However, Suresh Moon and Baban Besekar could not pursue. They couldn't, they somehow their vision got confined and therefore they couldn't grow. On the other hand, Savi made this significant departure and he moved to Baroda for the post-graduation course. So he joined Baroda. He was there in graphics, did his MFA between 82 and 84. And very interestingly, he started exploring his own past, his own self. Like, why can't, if the narrative painters in Baroda can narrate, then why I cannot narrate my own tale? This is a question Savi asked himself, and this is how he started exploring. So he, coming from untouchable community, he understood the pain. He also realized like the caste discrimination was very much rampant and visible everywhere in India, whether it is Maharashtra of that time and this time, whether it is Gujarat of this time and that time. It's very much there. It is a disease of mind. It is a mental disease. It is a, like Ambedkar in his philosophy of Hinduism wrote that when a varna is a perversion, and that is why I say that caste is a psychotic perversion. So what you are living in is a psychotic perversion. So we are practicing psychotic perversions, and we have to come out of that psychotic perversions. However, what is important in this at this phase is that Savi, everybody knows the condition of untouchables. The narration of the past was very much part and parcel of the present in the present life. Like the untouchables had to have a sputum part hanging in the neck. He is not allowed to spit anywhere, so he had to spit in that in that pot which is hanging around the neck, and had to have a broom at the back, and the broom is not simply jhadu. What we call in Marathi is phada. Phada is a flat broom, which is made exclusively of certain leaves, and that particular phada, since it is sprayed horizontally and not in a round shape, so when untouchable walks, the street gets clean. So it is all purity and impurity kind of a notions that were in operation during that time, and these kind of a things were strongly fought by the Mahar untouchable communities in Maharashtra, and there's a long history to that, and this is what Savi explores. So and then he started making his graphics. So the general narrative is that the untouchables were outcasted. They were living on the out of the village. They were living on the dirt, and they were consuming dead beef. So this was a lifestyle. This was a living pattern of the time, and like even Savi's parents had those kind of things like eating dead beef and all kinds of things. Even my parents also had to eat dead beef and all those things. So it was a very different kind of a life, and those narratives were very much there in the memory, and the parents would always narrate those tales, and also narrate the resistance to all those impositions, and they would always tell that it was Dr. Ambedkar who asked them to give up many things. And that is how the traditional professions were discarded by the many Mahar untouchable communities, and they went for education, and that is the reason they are the educated lot. So wherever the untouchable communities in India left their traditional professions, they went for education, and they are the one who have progressed a lot. This is the reality, and today the Honorable Supreme Court and the Honorable political leadership of this nation, they completely misunderstood, they completely deny to understand this basic phenomenon that happened in the history or in the evolution of the progress of the untouchable communities in India. So while he was studying in Baroda, he went to Mumbai and he made Narayan Survey, and he observed, he saw the Devdasi the Devdasi prostitutes in Mumbai, and discovered how, from where they came, and that is how he went to Goa. And there he came to know that Saundati is a citadel of Devdasi tradition. So that is how he travels to Saundati and observes how the entire practices of Devdasi and the caste dimensions of the Devdasi. And he went on visiting Saundati. At times he went in a disguise. He grew his beard, hairs and all, and would go like a sadhu, and he observed and yeah, anything. So he would observe those things, and when the people in Saundati came to know what he was, they started hunting him, and Savi had to flee very secretly from that place and managed to save his life. So he was a close observer of the Devdasi tradition, and then he started painting that in his through his art. That became part of his art practice, and he he developed absolute command over the figure, and this is where uh, uh, Geeta Kapoor very rightly observed that he is one Indian contemporary painter who developed his. Excuse me, please, somebody mute yourself. So the hello, who is this Kranti? Please mute yourself. Hello. So the अरे भाई आप अपना माइक तो बंद कीजिए, मुझे बोलने दीजिए, नहीं तो फिर आप बोलिए.
Sorry, sir.
So the so that is where and he was the first. अपना माइक तो बंद कीजिए.
Sir, everyone's mic is everyone's mic is closed, sir.
Sorry, sir.
So the yeah. So the so he was the first painter in India to paint Devdasi. No feminist, no women, no any other person, no modernist, even like Hebber and all, never ever looked at Karnataka, because Hebber comes from Karnataka. He finds that dance and everything in the village as a great celebration, and bypassing the tradition of Devdasi which was existing in those villages. This is an irony of our modernists. And these so-called modernists, when it comes to the painting of the laborers in the urban spaces, they don't see caste as a problem. So the labor and caste are so much related with each other, so much embedded with each other, and this particular issues gets completely bypassed. So he goes on visiting Saundati. In 84, he moved to Delhi, and despite moving to Delhi, he constantly visited Saundati number of times. So his narrative of Saundati is quite thrilling one, and at times we feel ashamed of our being Indian or claiming ourselves as being modern. It's such a horrific practice, and that horrific practice was observed by Savi very closely. So there was this constant engagement. He went to those families, he stayed there, he observed there, he even had an interaction with the boys who were born out of that illicit relationship, and how these devdasis were sold for 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees in the red light area of Kamatipura in Mumbai. So in Mumbai or elsewhere, Savi could easily recognize that this particular girl has come from Devdasi tradition, because there are distinct markers he observed. And these markers, like he found not only in the city of Karnataka and Maharashtra and Andhra, but also in a state like Bengal and Odisha. So these are the typical markers he found. And then he was also awarded Mexico Fellowship between 1999 and 2003. Now I come to these early works of Savi, which are quite unique and very different. Like the figure becomes the constant stay in his art practice, and like a modernist, he made use of the elongated, voluptuous, at times voluptuous, and most of the times very thin figures. And why this thin why these thin figures? Precisely because of the malnutrition which the scheduled caste community constantly faced, not only during the time of the Britishers or even the pre-Britishers time, but even in the post-independent times. And the this sputum part all hanging around the neck, that became a very marked identity of the untouchable community. Similarly, the untouchable communities were carrying the dead cattle. So the dead cattle would be driven out by the untouchables, and then the skinning would be done by the cobbler community, and the skin would be taken away by the cobbler community, which are known as chamars or sambar in Maharashtra. And the Mahar and chamars then would cut the dead cattle and distribute the meat among themselves. This was the practice. And this is what exactly he is depicting, how the dead cattle is being carried by untouchable. Of course, the cattle cannot be lifted on the shoulder, but it is a very symbolic, very semiotic, in a in many ways, and it continues in his work. Whereas, there is this distinct shift in his work, like being trained in a graphic. I mean, you have to rub the surface of the zinc plate, do lot of things. I mean, it is a very laborious process. Similarly, the uh, uh, the other method of printing. I mean, all the methods of printing, whether it is a zinc plate or it is a stone. So all those methods are highly laborious, and mostly they are uh, you know uh, uh, there's a limitation of color. So mostly the students learn in monochrome, and the color becomes, you know, a neglected kind of an element. And when the multicolor print started coming in, you do find a change in the in the making of the graphic prints. However, Savi's journey to color is quite a fascinating one. I cannot pinpoint you when exactly, but certainly it started when he moved to Delhi. And when he was constantly going to Saundati, he would see he became a master of sketching, because in the Nagpur art school, the students would be forced to go for sketching, and Savi would go to the market, to the Rani Dashi Square, and also railway station. So these were some of his, and railway station was one of his favorite spot. And everyone would like to go to railway station precisely because there are people all around. They wait for the train. So there is, I mean, you are hardly noticed by the passengers standing there. And they can wait and wait for a long time. There is always a long wait. There are a lot of people sitting in many postures, in many these things. So it becomes a that rapid sketching method is a very important one. And this he fully mastered. And that is how he used them in his graphic works while delineating the bodies of the untouchability and the bodies of the devdasis. So there is this whole idea of destruction, or the strong sketchy lines or zigzag lines, and making them as part of the entire volume, that has a specific meaning. And that specific meaning is that of the anarchies that are imposed by the caste Hindu communities on those bodies. So you have them. This is how there is an emergence of his distinct iconography of untouchables. So, so you can see how untouchable is carrying a bird, or a or a chicken, or a hen. And at another level, the untouchable women, I mean, at the back of the untouchable women, there are there are two heads of pig. So the norm was that whenever the untouchable women was going, or whenever the devdasi was going, she had to make a voice of pig, which was an indication that the untouchable devdasi or untouchable women was walking on the street. So it was a mark for others. There is a very good book in Marathi called Anishta Pratha by Uttam Kamble. It graphically describes how the devdasis are made, how there is this involvement of the priest and the landlords. And it is a landlord, mostly this caste Hindu community person, who decides to have a girl because he wants to sexually enjoy that girl, the girl who is just 6-7 years old. And he approaches the family of the girl, and these are from untouchable communities, and that is how the girls are indoctrinated to become devdasi. And when they achieve puberty, when they become 14-16 years old, they are married to a temple. And then the first rite was that of a priest of the temple who would copulate with her, no matter of what age and all those things. And then the patron, that particular these things, would then copulate with her and do everything for her maintenance and all kinds of things. So this is how the tradition was, and this is how the tradition is still going on. So therefore, our claims of modernity becomes a dubious claim. Then here you have the untouchable community walking on the street, and the street is made of are covered with bells. So when you hit the stick on the road, the noise of the bell would indicate that the untouchables are walking and they are coming. So you have the swastika symbol on these parts, and this is very interesting. You know, according to Savi, I mean, it is his critique of this tradition that I spit on your religiosity, I spit on your authority, I spit on your nonsensical things. So that's how this sputum part having Om and swastik symbol. That is why he put this Om and swastik symbol on the sputum part, which is hanging on the around the neck. And another important thing is that, you know, while doing his brushwork, so all his initial works and still that element of graphic indeed overpowers him. Because in the graphic you always go for the microstructural textural surface. So you have to be very cautious of creating that or handling that. And Savi makes that with his brushstrokes. So he employs multiple ways, like spatula, then brush, then hand, everything he does. And he is a very rapid painter. I'm not see I in my, at least I can say that I have seen very few people who dare to paint publicly. One was Hussain Sahab, fantastic one, where he would happily make a paint in a public glare, whether it is Madhuri Dixit or anything, he would not mind, and he would do it within no time. Similarly, I've seen second person who dared to paint publicly was Savi Savarkar. He would paint 6x6 canvas in just 15 minutes. I have recorded videos. Then large panels would be connected, would be painted in just another 15-20 minutes. That is how rapidly he works. So there is a tremendous sense of the figurative composition that always play in his head, and he brings out very rapidly those things. And this whole rapidness, his destruction, the textural surface is all about conveying the unrest in the society, that how society is deep, are deeply problematic, and how ethically, morally they have been subverted and practice anarchy all the time, and there is an imposition of this anarchy all the time. So these are very interesting work he does. And then that quality of the graphic and the quality of the ink and paint, it's a very good combination in his work when it comes to the technical side of it. And as I told you, you know, at times the figure becomes very lean and thin, at times it becomes little aggrandized, only certain part gets little aggrandized. And the whole idea of curvature, especially many of his figures, you will observe that there is a curvature in the spine, and this particular curvature in the spine is to do the kind of a head load or the labor which the untouchable communities were constantly doing. And that is the reason you will observe that among many untouchable communities in the state of Maharashtra, I don't know about others, but I can say that in the state of Maharashtra, when they grow little, I mean, there is a the spine comes out. I mean, they start stooping. Despite doing all kinds of work and everything. I mean, that becomes a very strong characteristics. This stooping of the body becomes very strong characteristics because of constantly bearing the load over the head and over the shoulders, because it's a labor work which the communities are involved with. And the interesting thing then Savi brings in is these three important markers. You see a temple, you see a girjaghar means church, and you see a mosque. And the untouchable is treated as untouchable despite, I mean, wherever they go to these kind of institutions. So it's a marked critique of the present secularism, which is always projected. Earlier, the symbol of secularism in India was that of these three, like the temple, then the mosque, and the church, shown together, and we are living together. This is how the symbol of secularism was. With the problem of Punjab, the Gurudwara gets added. This is how our the secular imagery grow. And and the secularists in the country did not see what is happening on the ground. The untouchables they did not become part of the mainstream at all. They remain untouchable all the time. And the religious authorities of these faiths also did not pay any attention to this. However, there are Christian conversions that have happened, and that is why they were converted to Christianity in the colonial India, mainly in Andhra Pradesh and in many coastal areas. They are constantly treated as untouchables only. So the tag of untouchability somehow doesn't go. And that is why these symbols in Savi's work become very, very important. And many people find it very offensive of this symbol. Are walking on the stick, on the sputum part, and the bell, the stick having a bell. Then came this particular thing, this foundation of India. I think this is a very, I mean, some people find it very illustrative, like you are making some kind of a book illustration. But it had its own history, because while in Delhi, he was conversing with some people, and they were making outright, doing abusing, or a sort of an abusing things that they were talking about, and they were discussing about their superiority, and that how they are superior to all other communities and all those things. And that made Savi very angry. So he came back to his residence and then created this particular artwork. I find it one of the masterpieces he created in his lifetime, and nobody really dared to paint like this. The Chaturvarna of the Indian society. Like top is Brahmin, the arms are Kshatriya, the potbellies are the Vaishya class, Vaishya community, and then the Shudras and the Ati Shudras. So you can see the Ati Shudras are indicated by these bells tied around the feet. And because they were the untouchables, had to tie a bell while walking. And it is this lot, the Shudra and Ati Shudras, which are going away from this Chaturvarna fold and embrace Buddhism. So this is how they are walking away and going towards Buddhism. So in a way, it is also inspired by the 14th October 1956 event, where more than 500,000 people got converted to Buddhism at Nagpur in the central India under the leadership of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And this particular artwork in many ways became very extremely significant, though it is a very minimalist depiction. Highly symbolized, highly minimalized, and there is a tremendous condensation. The text gets condensed into a simple pictorial form, and this this is always a challenge for any artist, that how a long text of your feelings, of your readings, of your narration, you can convert into a simplified visual form. So this, I feel, I mean, to me, it is a masterpiece he created. So this was in 1987. Then we have this particular artwork, destruction of the foundation of India by the Dhamma Chakra of the Buddhism. Now, why those things? It was also a time when there is a publication of a book called Ambedkar Writings and Speeches, volume number 3, where the revolution and counter-revolution essay was published, though it is not in a complete form, but it's an important essay. And Dr. Ambedkar considered rise of Buddhism as revolution, whereas the downfall of Buddhism or the upsurge of Brahmanism is a process of counter-revolution. And he relates it with the reign of Pushyamitra Shunga, and there are a number of reasons he gave. So I don't want to go into those historical analysis of how that process Dr. Ambedkar explained and all those things. And in that essay, he takes into account the corpus of Brahmanical literature as a part of production of counter-revolution strategies. To me, in modern India, Ambedkar initiated this revolution, and this revolution is the formation of the Indian Constitution and acceptance of Indian Constitution, and we accepted it as we resolved to be a republic in 1950. However, subversion of Constitution and the emergence of certain politicality in the Indian political sphere is nothing but a process of counter-revolution. Because Constitution is all about transformation. Whereas those who are anti-constitutional, they are status quoist and they don't want to change and they don't want to get transformed. So when they come to power, and the political power has been of that nature only, whether it is this political party or that political party. So that is why I said that, politics in India is all about Ambedkar, anti-Ambedkar. So this is the destruction of the foundation of India by the Dhamma Chakra of Buddhism. Then this is untouchables under the black sun, where one can understand the nature of their of their pathetic conditions in which they were living. And the the crow becomes very important symbol, because the crow always hunts. I mean, he stays around the dirt. So and how the communities have been living. One should read Upra by Lakshman Mane, which is very important autobiography, how his community stayed outside the village constantly and constantly was moving from one place to another place. The Mahar and Chamar untouchable communities were more like a settled communities, but were discarded communities. So they were constantly living outside the society. So it was a very ghettoized kind of a thing. And then this particular artwork is very significant precisely because, it's a Devdasi and a Brahmin who is going to copulate with Devdasi, and he is carrying a water with him, because he doesn't want to use the water which is there in Devdasi's house. So he doesn't want to touch the vessel which the Devdasi would provide. So therefore, he carries water, drinks water before copulation, and after copulation, he cleans his genital by the water which he brought himself with him. This is how Savi observed those things, and this is how this painting was made. then you have this series of works which he created, and all these works, the thematic remains constant, but the structure and the representation gets completely changed. And this particular one is, you can see the fishes and all, which is there in the eastern side of India, that is West Bengal, where how the tradition of Devdasi, I mean, there is this whole enunciation ceremony that goes, and there is a ritual in which the fishes uh, are used, and they are given as a part of an exchange and all kinds of things. So this is how Savi created these images. Then the Devdasi, who is it's a female body, and how she is married to a temple, and she doesn't have any control over her body. She absolutely has no right. So everything, like the owner becomes the controller. So she cannot do anything without her owner, and whatever owner says, so she has to do that, and constantly she has to remain as a married to a temple. But in reality, it becomes a sexual exploitation for her, because there's a priest of the temple who constantly exploits her, and there is a patron of the Devdasi who constantly exploits her. And absolutely she cannot complain, she even cannot say anything. So there is the sense of disgust, the sense of subjugation, the element of narcissism, the element of abject conditionality. All those things are so much embedded, so much visible in this particular work of Devdasi. And then there's a constant attack on her body, and that is why he has shown that squatting legs, and that attack is, of course, there is this whole sexuality which is involved. And one can read Andrea Dworkin's book, uh, how this whole element of many of those things become important means of control, uh, control, overpower, then the sexual pleasure, and also the sexual violence. So everything comes together. Then this is again Devdasi, where Savi observed that the some of the Devdasis are coming to Nagpur and converting to Buddhism. So she's coming out of the fold of the Brahmanism. Then these three puppets, again a very interesting work, interesting take on the claim secularism, and this etching work, where one of the early works he does, and the secularists are not very happy with this kind of a work of Savi, and they always constantly found him very, I mean, having these kind of works, they become very uncomfortable, extremely, because it hit you. All these Savi's works hit you like anything. Then this is three Brahmins, how the Brahmins come together and conspire and make a group of and 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 constantly, in a recent time, one of the the journalist based in Chandigarh, who comes from the Brahmin community, and he said it openly that the out of 100, only 5% of the Brahmin communities they support reservations, and they want they want change. Not, I don't see that they want transformation, but they want change. They respect human being. Whereas 95% of the Brahmin communities in India, they are opposed to reservations. And the caste Hindu are a big lot who are constantly uh, creating hurdles in the transformation uh, 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 in the way of Republic of Government of India. So this becomes hugely problematic. Then there are other these things where this element of introspection, the element of uh, aspirations, the element of change, which are very visible in some of his works. And then there are depictions of the Joktas. So you have the Devdasi giving birth to child is a graphic depiction of the of their darker side of their life, standing image of the Devdasi whose only legs are visible and a small baby is coming out. On the horizontal ground, only a face is shown. It's an abject surrender of their own power to have any control over her own, and the owner of the Devdasi refuses to grant any claims to the child. Then you have untouchable and three symbols again. So there are these there are these aspirations that are constantly visible in his depiction, and how it is constantly get harassed. Whereas here is an image of Buddha. There is a Dhamma Chakra. So the untouchable is looking at the image of Buddha as a part of liberation, as a part of becoming a human being, as a part of karuna, as a part of maitri, and also as a part of equality and liberty. Then these are the series of the Zen masters, which is spiritual gurus. So they are spiritual gurus. And the normal depiction of the spiritual gurus, if you see by the contemporary Indian artist or the modern Indian artist, is that of a very different nature. Whereas Savi made these, I mean, he completely transformed this whole idea of spirituality, spiritual figure. And then this is very important. Like there is this whole Varna hierarchy. There is also the gender suppression, and it is basically a Devdasi and how it is being suppressed. Then we have another depiction, women with blue head. So it is all about the killing of a Dalits in the society, and whenever some of those incidents happened, Savi went and visited those families. So he would instantly go from Delhi wherever it was possible, and that is how he is constantly engaged with many of those protests and many other things. So there is this is a Muslim woman who lost all her kins and all in the riots. And now I come to Manu, statue of Manu in the High Court premises. And even our great judiciary has no courage, the Supreme Court has no courage to order the High Court to remove this statue. Because Indian Constitution is anti-Manu. So neither the claim conscious mind in the meritorious judiciary in India can ever voice against Manu, nor it has the courage to delegitimize the Bhagavad. Now you see Savi's Manu, Dalit pissing on Manu. Then you have Manu, many Manu by Savi Savarkar. So, I mean, Manu as a crooked fellow, Manu as a wicked fellow, Manu as a hegemonic fellow. So all these epithets, whatever you may think of, they're all shown in a very typified, caricaturized manner. But this caricaturization is very different in Savi. So you do see that the structure of Manu itself is a very complex and a very crooked structure by by nature itself. So that's how he paints Manu. Then of course I explain you these particular works, and then there are these joktas which are with the children are made to be joktas. So they are castration that happens. So the castration happens when the children reach at the age of 11, 12. And many children die also because of the profuse bleeding. And they become joktas. So they live along with along with the Devdasi in the other people sexually exploit him. So you basically create everything for your pleasure and completely bypassing the social concerns. This is a big exhibition which Savi had made. This was in Lalit Kala Academy in the year 2010, 2009. And he created those big panels in the gallery itself, just within the span of 20 minutes. So you can see the kind of a command he has. So these are the big panels. Then this is the daughter of Savi Savarkar, who lost, I mean, he lost his daughter very recently, which was very, and it really hit him like anything in many ways. But he managed to remain calm, many hurdles, I mean, faced a lot of hurdles in his life. And then afterwards, you will notice a complete different take. It is a minimalist. It is the texture gets toned down. It gets softened. Nevertheless, the uh, the the impact is not at all compromise. So these are all the minimalist work he arrives at, and these are beautiful works he produced, and within no time, of course. So there are I mean, there is this burden, there is this sorrow, there is this pain, there is this whole idea of suppression, there is whole idea of depression. There is also a hope. So the figures do have the constant hopes. So these are some of the important works he produced. And then this is just a recent work he produced. This is a very good work which deals with the Vajrasuchi, a text which was created uh, by by great Ashwagosha, the Buddhist poet and a monk. How this idea of Shunyata one can transform into a pictorial code. So for untouchable and this enlightenment that matters the most. Enlightenment not in terms of spiritual enlightenment, but the by the process of righteous knowledge, you try to ward off your ignorances and you achieve that enlightenment and understand how you should live your life. And when you go further in the Buddhist practices, there is this whole idea of shunyata, which is basically a word used as synonym to the Nibbana. So Nibbana is cessation of hate, anger, violence, and desire of mind, which Swami brings in very beautifully. And therefore, this idea of spirituality for Savi is completely different than the whole idea of spirituality. For them, it is more like a Brahma and Parabrahma or Brahma Satya. For Savi, it is not a Brahma Satya. It is all about the present life. It is all about your aspirations. It is all about your happiness. It is all about your sorrow. It is all about your experiences. And it is all about coming out of those sad structure or the constitutionally, philosophically, religiously, everything. So thank you. Yeah, so now if anybody has any question, anything, any comment, so we can go on. I mean, the body of work he produces is enormous. It becomes very difficult, to pick up his work and speak. There are a number of things. I mean, I know I have deliberately removed certain works Otherwise, the presentation would have become very long. So I just tried to show you the early phase, then the middle phase, and also the late phase, which he is currently engaged with. Yeah.
Rajshri?
Yeah, unmute yourself, Rashmi.
Thank you, sir. This was such an insightful lecture. It kind of opened up so many things. There is a small question. I sound very naive, but you use this term speculative, aesthetical, metaphysics. I found it difficult to understand. Could you help me, sir?
I hope you understand what is speculative, and I also hope you understand what is metaphysics. So when you understand what
Yes.
is metaphysics, so it is a speculative metaphysics in the sense of, say, for example, the whole idea of Brahma and Parabrahma it is a speculative metaphysics. So the artistic practices in India are so much connected with their self. There is no non-self in it. That is one thing. And second thing is that their idea of there is no critique. There is no critical intervention. Neither there is a critique, nor there is a critical intervention, and nor there is the rejection of this kind of a speculative metaphysics. So even the person like Kant, he supports those kind of ideas. So there is so much of presuppositions embedded in Kant, and you go with these kind of presuppositions and go on doing your art practices. So that is why I said that it is all speculative metaphysical aesthetics.
So would you also say that most of the modernist progressive painters of that time also never really touched upon ground reality at all? I mean, if you see their entire
Yes,
body.
that is very true. That is very true. You see, I just tell you one small example. I had a conversation with Akbar Padamsi, and Akbar Padamsi made those Gandhi drawings and all. I mean, technically they are very good, no doubt about that. And when those painters who made the images of Gandhi, technically they are very beautiful. Certainly, artistically they are very beautiful. But did they ever see contradictions in Gandhi? When I told Akbar Padamsi the contradictions in Gandhi, the problems in Gandhi, as I said, there is this Rashikar Mundra's book where he describes that Gandhi says that these untouchables and the Muslims will come together and butcher caste Hindus. I mean, this is how your non-violence play an important role. So whether you are a violent or non-violent, I mean, there are a number of examples. Gandhi was sleeping naked with the young girls. And then he says that, oh, this is my brahmacharya, tapacharya, and all kinds of things. So you don't want to accept that. Neither the feminists would like to, discard or make a critique of Gandhi. So, and Dr. Ambedkar makes it very clear. Gandhi is all about antiquity, going back, antiquity, and not going forward. Whereas Ranade is all going forward. There's a fantastic essay, Ranade, Gandhi in China by Dr. Ambedkar. And when I said these things to Akbar Padamsi, his instant response was, no, I don't think Bapu will do these kind of things or ever said this. Same thing when I had a conversation with Vidya Chitre, who studied in JJ School of Art, who also exhibited in Mumbai. And she said it very clearly, मला नाही वाटत गांधीसारखा पुरुष असं काही बोलत असेल. Meaning, I don't think person like Gandhi would speak like this or would say anything like this. I told the contradictions when it comes to the Varnashrama Dharma, the Jati Dharma, and Gandhi made it very clearly. And that is where Ambedkar completely differs. So all these modernists, they were completely dominated, controlled by these presuppositions, and they never ever went to examine themselves. So they become a mute performers of the Brahminical cultural nationalism, which was being played out by the Congress party as well as the dominant groups of that time and even of the present time.
Sir, can I also add um, this removal of the Ambedkar's perspective, work, writings, etc. It's not just, I'm an architect. So I know in architectural pedagogy also, it's completely removed. We are supposed to study settlements, spatial organizations, but we never talk about the caste. How can we ever study caste without a settlement without understanding the caste system?
Correct, right.
So
That's true.
I suppose there is a complete reworking of how even architecture is taught in colleges. Unless we
I
don't
com-
address it, it's I think a lost. I mean, we lose out in our understanding of how our societies are framed and put together.
Yeah,
And
you are very
unless
right. You are
and unless we
right.
don't recognize, I think unless we don't see like his work that you talked about, sir's work, this is not there in popular art schools. I mean, we are not taught this art. We are taught about the progressive artists. I am taught about Abhindranath Tagore, but not, and none, I'm pretty sure none of the students would have even looked at Savarkar's work, his work at all. So I'm so glad you brought it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, any other person?
I don't see any other questions, sir. So, is there anything that Dr. Savarkar would like to add to this, to the conversation? He did speak a little bit when we started, but I mean, considering we are discussing his work, it's very rare to have the artist there while you're discussing his work.
Well, there are many things I must say, I control myself, but otherwise it becomes a long presentation. So I try to make it as concise and as simple as possible.
Okay, Rajshri's back.
Rashri again.
Sir, could you suggest other artists also whose work we could kind of go through and understand, which also offers a very brutal
there are-
kind of
there are-
critique?
I would say there are post Savi Savarkar painters. So that I will deal in the next class.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
We have a rather long question from Piyush.
Huh.
The counter revolution was aesthetic also with production of texts like Natya Shastra, Chitra Sutra, etc., which see revival of modern India also. Can you please talk about the visual and compositional markers of that Brahminical aesthetic and how anti-caste art opposes that?
The anti-caste art opposes all those. See, one thing one should always remember that any art, it has its own language. There is a difference, like when I talked about the literary movement, so there was this whole idea of how do you write your own narratives. So when Daya Pawar wrote Balut, it was an eye-opener for many people. Oh, life is like this. And there are a number of people. So they narrated in their own language. They used their own colloquial Marathi. And they purposely did it, saying that what Marathi you speak is all your Puneri Mumbai Marathi, which is very Brahminical. So it is all the Puneri Brahmin Marathi, and we reject that. That's a very strong statement they made. And that is how they constructed their own narrative. The poems were constructed very differently and not a regular run of a mill where you become very romantic. So you are going around around some girl and expressing your love and all those things. So those kind of concerns were not there. Rather, a core question of caste, gender, sexuality, and the issues of the morality and ethicality. These were concerns that were addressed through these literary this thing. So the literature is all about, the writers were constructing the self in the perception of others. Whereas when it comes to art, art is governed by a different language. See, there is a difference between the visual language and the written language. The written language has certain grammatical rule, has certain grammatical structure, whereas the visual language has no such grammar. I mean, you can't do, there's no fixed rule कि इस color के बाद यही color आएगा. Like you put red and then afterwards you put black or green or something. No, That doesn't happen in case of visual language. Though we are always told about the art, the color theory, the color wheel and everything. But in reality, we don't use that. I mean, it is just a technical understanding that is there. But there is no such rule as such that you have to put particular color after this particular color, of a specific color. No such rule exists, and there are multiplicities involved. So the language will always have its own sensibility and will always have its own importance. So the visual language, so without visual vocabulary, you can't do anything. Person like Malvika Raj uses the community vocabulary which is being practiced in Madhubani painting. So she's using that and painting the contemporaries, the contemporary happenings, the modern narratives. So one can see how the language gets evolved. Now, the modern India is concerned, the Natya Shastra and lot of all other texts, though they were instrumental they were used, as a part of Brahminical cultural nationalism, that only through this textual tradition we can rebuild our lost glory. And what was that lost glory? Again, lost glory was all about the Brahminical practices. So Sanskrit becomes an epitome, is the law, and whatever is written in Sanskrit language is the things, is the best we have. I mean, these kind of ideas, the art schools or even the dissemination of the tradition started happening in the colonial period, in the pre-independent India. And that is how the art styles, there is the constant European interactions and all those things that constantly go on. But they are all at a formal level. You see, if you see Tagore and all, what Tagore was doing in Europe, to me, he was more addressing his own brother and Aryan brethren. Nothing more than that. I don't think intellectually he was involved. Intellectually, he was involved with the Vedantic, who was there in Germany. And the Vedantics are completely against the equality, as simple as this. They have not created the structures of equality. They may claim that we are against inequalities, but they have not created the structures of equality. This is also very important to understand. And therefore, the norms that have been set by this hegemonic group, I mean, the kind of practices they establish, that get established by these particular groups becomes a norm. Say, for example, Gandhi wanted to have a Haripura panel. I mean, that Haripura panel, he says that you should have a community. So all the caste communities are shown. Of course, untouchables are not there. It is all the working caste, who are like different who are engaged in different kind of professions, and mostly related with the urban and the semi-urban and the rural India. And Nandalal Bose, made those kind of sketches, showed those kind of figures, and they're more like a decorative one. So this idea of decorativeness, that idea of celebration, this exoticism, has been a constant mainstay of modernist art practices. And person like Savi completely denied this exoticism. He destroyed this exoticism, I must say. He is one person who dared to question this exoticism. And that he questions through Ambedkarian lens. It's very important. It is not just, person like Rimzan, who also comes from the untouchable community of Kerala and who talks about, who represents or shows those through those installations and all. But this practice is what? It is more romantic in nature. It is more a Harijan syndrome. Because he is a Gandhian. And the Gandhi term untouchables has Harijan. So you have a Harijan syndrome. Savi is not Harijan syndrome. Savi is completely Ambedkarian syndrome. And he is like, and any Ambedkarian would not agree with these kind of nonsensicalities. So there is a complete bypassing of this nonsensicality or rejection of the nonsensicalities, and therefore the inhibitions that have been nurtured since a very long time in the contemporary Indian art practices, Savi breaks that inhibitions. And that was also the reason, I had titled my exhibition as Aesthetics of Dismantling the Aesthetics of Inhibitions, which I did in Kochi during the time of Kochi Biennale. And so the counter revolution has always been there. It is always in process. And rather, the counter revolution that started in ancient India continued till the modern times. So the coming of the constitution, I consider it as a revolution again in 20th century. And the upsurge of Brahmanism and the Brahmanical polity in the Indian Democratic Republic is the process of counter-revolution. So there is always this constant conflict and fight that goes on, because the Brahmanical thinking is all about inequalities, and consequently you try to create your aesthetic practices as a part of global and as a part of materiality of material, bypassing the engagements of the communities which are involved with that material, and bypassing the social and the gender, the oppressive nature of the gender which is involved, and the modernist have also been instrumental. I mean, some artists would like to say no, Ahmed, even if that person is a female, says no, I cannot be categorized into a gender and all kinds of things. I don't believe in it. It's good you don't believe in it. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But what about your art practices? Your art practices, does it make a critique of the ongoing belief systems? Does it make a critique of what the problems that are being faced by the women group? So these articulations become very important. And unless until you have, I mean, you can show in multiple ways. Even you can use abstractions for that. And there are youngsters who are making use of the abstraction in order to denote the unrest in the society. So there are a number of things that are going on. It's not that only figurative can be powerful. Even a non-figurative can also be equally powerful. And it is equally creative. So it matters a lot how you use your language. So language does not become a concern today. Nobody is going to ask you, you create your own language or anything. The way Savi, during that time in art school, there was this training, you have to create your own style, you have to create your own language and all kinds of things. And Savi went on pursuing those things, and he created his own iconography. He created his own figures. There are I mean, wherever you see those kind of things, you can immediately recognize that, oh, it is Savi Savarkar. But it is not just making a signature figure or making a signature composition. No, that's not correct. There are a number of things that are involved. There is so much of things that go in the background. There is so much of unrest in the background. All this texture, all this anarchy, all this mental tensions, all these physical tensions, they are so much embedded in his work. And that is why his works become very different than the rest of the modernist or the other contemporary art practices.
Do we have any more questions? Piyush says thank you. I think that's about it right now, sir. I guess people will come back for their questions next time.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you everyone else for joining in.
And sorry for joining late. I apologize again. But next time it will be on time.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Okay.